Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for another plan of Keep Six Connected Six. Tonight we'll be discussing mental health inside and outside of the justice system. We will be having our guest tonight, Donna Alexander, join us shortly. We will also have a gentleman from the Institute from Inside join us with a voice recording of his mental health while he's been incarcerated. And we will have another gentleman join us and speak about his situation while he was in custody and how he dealt with his mental health. Good evening, Donna. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you for
Hope you're
joining
well.
me. It's my pleasure. I'd like to introduce to everyone here is with us tonight, Donna Alexander. And Donna is a social worker who has supported Keep Six for the last 3 years. She's also a part of from the Black Health Canada. And it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And before we get started, I would just like to say that to all of our followers out there in the community, it's a very, very difficult time for everyone. And I know firsthand when it comes to mental health in our community, it isn't something that's talked about. And today, my whole perspective is to bring some highlights to mental health, but also to bring resources that may be available to people in our community when it comes to the mental health aspect. And Donna, maybe you yourself, I mean, this is your area, and I'm quite privileged to have you here. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the mental health aspect when it comes to our community and even our Black youth.
Yes, so you're right. So as a community, we're at the tail end, I'm hoping, of this pandemic. But this is a pandemic that has disproportionately impacted the Black community. In terms of every single indicator, whether you're talking about lives that were lost, people that lost employment, certainly people that don't have stable housing or food insecurity. So we look at people like myself who are fortunate to be working from home, but a lot of people, Black people especially, were not fortunate to be working from home. And when you think about especially people that are in the system right now, so if like as difficult as the pandemic has been for most of us, I think when you talk about people that have been in the system, and especially those that transition from the system in the middle of a pandemic, it has been extremely challenging in terms of resources, in terms of finding the appropriate support that's out there. So it's been a huge threat to our mental health. Like, I don't think there's one of us that can say, you know what, this pandemic has not threatened our mental health. But yes, we're still dealing with the stigma. We're still dealing with the fear of accessing mental health services. We're still dealing with just the reluctance and the stigma, the not wanting people to know that we're not doing well or that we may be experiencing some mental health challenges. So we've come a long way, but I would say we still have a long way to go.
Yeah,
and it's important for us to start having these discussions, right? I think it's just really important to make spaces for these kinds of discussions.
yes, definitely. And I'm the first one to put my hand up and says that this pandemic itself has affected me personally. My mental health, just trying to function daily between work, business, and just everyday life. Being away from things that we normally been able to do and be limited, even to see certain family members because it might be elders and so forth, right? But
Mm-hmm.
even I myself last week or week before last, yeah, last week, I had a really, really hard time because I was speaking to some members of the organization, and I had the opportunity to sit into a conversation with individuals that's incarcerated, and they were so drawn and so suppressed and so weak. One gentleman said to me in the conversation that we're having is that I'm weak. I'm weak, but I have to stay strong to fight for my rights or my, to get through it. I can't quit.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at it, and these individuals were outlining a bunch of things that they were going through, like things of not being able to see a television, you know, not being able to shower for a 7-day period or getting clean clothes. And these are things that us in the community might take granted, but these things play. If we sit down as a community and said, go through these situations personally in our lives, and see the toll it would take on us. So just think about how if these people have been treated that way as human, how they must be feeling, caged up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of very interesting. And I had an email today that came across my desk, and it was from a family member of an individual who is incarcerated, and he spoke about mental health and his own personal mental health. And I'm going to share that recording with our viewers tonight because I feel it's very, very important to hear something from someone else. And then you and I can even talk about it until our other guests join us here tonight. Okay, one moment, please. Yeah, yeah. What it do? What it do? What it do? It's Biz Loc, live from the East Detention, checking in with T6. First things first, I just want to send a major shout out to this podcast and its viewers. Mental health is a serious topic that a lot of us don't focus on and choose to ignore, based on the fact it's hard to express our deepest concerns to others in fear of embarrassment or judgment. I myself suffered from these fears until I began articulating my thoughts through lyrics. The passion in my music is undeniably evident, which all stems from the pain I've endured since a youngin'. After gaining a tremendous amount of popularity through music videos and social media presence, my means of expression became more of a burden than anything else. It put a target on my back for my rivals and apparently even more so for the Toronto Police Service. Shortly after my rise to fame began, so did a major project gang raid investigation with me as the focal point. It's a shame that a discharged bullet made contact with me before the police did, which could have potentially resulted in me losing my life. Unfortunately, that's when my mental health started going downhill. Throughout my recovery process, I continued using music as an avenue to release my thoughts, no matter how graphic or fabricated they may have been. Little did I know, all the pictures I was painting were being documented by the police in efforts to build a case against me. Stupidity led me to breach the conditions imposed against me. PTSD from being shot numerous times led me to carry a firearm to protect myself. Both these decisions led to my arrest and the revelation of a 14-month-long wiretap investigation. Having served a federal sentence before, the loss of my freedom again, along with the accumulation of several serious charges after being on the brink of stardom, shattered my aspirations. I no longer felt the urge of writing music, feeling as if it was that very same outlet that led to the situation I'm in. Truth is, it was my actions that got me in this situation and not the talent I was gifted with from God. I took it for granted, blaming my popularity on the events that transpired, when really, if I had made the right decisions, which were altered by my mental health at the time, then I would still be on the road to this day. Long story short, the state of your mental health could alter your life's outcomes for better or for worse. If you allow your mental health to deteriorate, there's no telling what you do next because you're no longer in control. As of lately, after talking to people around me, I've started appreciating my blessings rather than taking them for granted based on my incarceration.
I was regaining control over my mental until they implemented a new SAFER program within the institution, which resulted in us being locked up in our cells throughout the majority of the day. Aside from the lockdowns, there are many more aggravating factors that had me feeling mentally oppressed, but I won't elaborate on each form of unjust treatment. What I will say is, all these injustices are causing a strain on my mental health, along with everyone else that's experiencing this with me. Limited access to the phone makes it hard for us to talk to anyone or seek advocacy, making the situation even worse. I've been witnessing mental instability displayed through aggression and disorderly conduct in efforts to fight for the bare minimums and our rights that no longer seem to be exercised. Instead of trying to facilitate our needs, the institution is just taking disciplinary action to force these new rules and living conditions upon us with no regard of our mental health. I try my best to remain silent, but at times I feel as if I'm about to self-destruct and explode on those who tend to have an aggressive approach, no matter what the consequences would be. For the first time in my life, I finally understand the importance of mental health, and this is why I feel honored to be able to help raise awareness by telling my story and sharing words of empowerment to help others make it through times of hardship. That being said, tough times don't last. Tough people do. Just know that. Better days will always be ahead, no matter how dark your life may seem. Keep your head up and hang in there until those days come. I wrote some lyrics.
So, thank you. And that was from Bisloke at the Toronto East Detention Center. He's incarcerated, and he was describing his mental health and what he's going through. So, Donna, that's very, very powerful to me.
I agree. A lot of us, we have no understanding, like you would say, of what goes on, you know, in environments such as that. Like we don't have an understanding. We cannot possibly, like, as much as we think we know, we really don't. And how it's a daily struggle to maintain mental health, to maintain your mental health. Every day it's a struggle, right? And he's so articulate and he's so expressive because he has insight that I think is really, really useful. You know, and I'm glad that he was able to you know, to share his experiences. And that's what that's what I was talking to before, like, not only at Toronto South, right? But what about the other men, you know, that are, you know, that are away, in little towns all across Ontario, where it's not so easy for people to go and see them. It wasn't easy before the pre-pandemic. It was not easy, right? And so the pandemic is a result of restrictions where people are not able to visit anymore. So people go for really extended periods without seeing their loved ones. It's been really difficult. It's been extremely difficult.
My concern is that how do we as a community help these individuals? Even let's even go a little bit further than that. We all know that sooner or later, like someone like Bisloke or the other person, they're going to be released or sometime. So we have to think about the trauma. That's what I am looking at, because we're talking about mental health. I'm looking about it from the trauma aspect, right? Because we all go through changes in our life, and we all go through different situations. The issue comes down to is how we are able to manage these things in our lives, right? But also, after going through that whole traumatic experience, whatever he's living in there at the present time, how is he able to overcome that experience that he's gone through?
With a lot of support. And so this is the thing now, as a community, we don't have any organized, any effective, culturally safe, culturally affirming, organized entity at this point, mental health entity, for men that are transitioning back into the community, for men that are trying to begin the integration process. There, you know, nothing exists really. It's a patchwork, a very fragmented system, right? But what we need is something that's just devoted to their needs, right? And you know, like we've been talking about this for a while. Last year, a bunch of us met with CSC to say the same thing, right? To talk about the reality that nothing exists in the community. And so if you're going to release, you know, people back into the community, then you're setting them up for failure if nothing exists, right? And so the issue is that how can we as a community get together some effective leadership that's going to be able to champion this cause and to get the proper resources that are in place, not just programming, but the proper long-term, sustainable, culturally affirming entity in place, because we need the disproportionality would suggest that we need something just for us, just for them, since there's so many of us that are in the system, right? That we need something so that when people are reintegrating back into the system, that they have a chance. Because a lot of time, you know, like it is really difficult, especially when you've been away for a while. It's really difficult to come out because most of your friends, family members, you know, perhaps it's not as tight as it was. And you know, when I did some work within the federal system, that was one of the concerns that were raised in terms of over a period of time, like people stop coming to visit more often, and it's almost as if, you know, folks have forgotten that you know, that these men are there, and the men express the same thing, right? And so how can we need, you know, we need to have something in place right now, something for us that's by us, right? That we can have, that it's there with the proper leadership, so that we know that it's sustainable. So those of us that, you know, when we move on, then there's something that's there.
Right.
But it's going to take a bit of advocacy and leadership. And so as a community, we're, you know, it's time we start having some serious discussions in terms of where do we go from here? Because, you know, this agenda really, it's, you know, it is not being at the forefront, right?
Right.
And when we talk about mental health, we're looking at a population that is extremely vulnerable to mental health issues and to mental illness.
Now, when we look at mental health in an overall scope, and when it comes to our community, and even someone like that gentleman speaking about his own struggles and what it's like for him going through within the system, being incarcerated, and the mental health he faces. There's a lot of repair and do. When we talk about, even use the word reintegration, you cannot have a person be reintegrated and not be able to deal with that part of the mental health for them, right? So if we are trying to say, well, we are trying to reintegrate people back in the system, but at the same token, we are trying to keep individuals from going back or reoffend. Well, we have to be able to fix that mental health, because I feel, as you clearly heard from that recording, that individual has a significant amount of trauma that he's facing at the present time. When he's talking about not being able to use the phone even to communicate, because that's the only resources he has, and then we have the COVID and everything else on top of it. You know, we've got a significant amount of trauma. So if we're speaking about reintegration, we have to address the mental health aspect that these individuals are facing, men and women.
Okay, and I agree with you. So yes, right. So folks get out, or they're on, you know, or they're in the community for a while, and the focus is on finding them jobs, do all of these things, right? But when the focus should be on the mental health part, So when we really think about it, right, the most important thing in life, in my view, is good mental health. If we have good mental health, we're able to do everything. If we don't have good mental health, nothing is possible. And so I always like to start out from the point that good mental health is the most important thing in life, right? We cannot accomplish anything without good mental health. If we don't have good mental health, nothing in life matters, right? If we don't have good mental health, it doesn't matter how much talent we have. It doesn't matter how much ambition, how much money, how much fame. Nothing else matters if we don't have good mental health. We have good mental health is the most important thing in order to sustain and to live a meaningful life, right? And so I think a lot of times we forget that, or we take it for granted. And so if we start out from taking care of people's trauma and their mental health, then we put them in a position where everything else is possible. You know, but it's difficult to say to someone that is experienced trauma and their mental health is compromised, oh, go out and find a job, go out and work, do all of these conditions and these requirements, right? Where the one thing that we should be focusing on is like encouraging the person to access good mental health services and access the appropriate trauma services to address their trauma. But we don't do that. We expect them to do everything else, and the one thing, the most important thing, we disregard that. We don't pay attention to that. And then we're surprised when they fail or when they end up back where they started, because the most crucial thing that we should be focused on, we fail to focus on that.
Now, so it's fair to say that when it comes to individuals being incarcerated and released, one of the things employment is important, of course, you know, but one of the things that should be addressed is the mental health, working on that individual or on their mental health to make them be able to sustain good employment, but also be able to have a good life, because the mental health plays a part of their everyday living.
Yeah, and so that's what I mean. It's you're expecting people to go to work. It's that if you're not well, if your mental health is compromised, how can you work? It's as simple as that, right? And so this is why a lot more resources need to go into the mental health part of it, right? But we in terms of the mental health part of it, that's always so under-resourced. And then you have other stuff like the working and all of these things that's over-resourced, right? And then the issue is that people are saying, oh, well, people lack motivation. People are not interested. People are not interested in meeting their pro-social needs, right? No, the person is anxious. The person is terrified. The person, is traumatized, But a lot of times mental illness may look to some people, to the inexperienced person, someone that is experiencing mental health, it looks like they're resistant. It looks like lack of motivation. It looks like lack of interest. It looks like no insight. That's what it looks like to them. Well, in reality, the person may be really struggling with mental health issues, but don't feel comfortable or confident in saying, you know what, I'm really depressed. I'm really anxious. I can't sleep at night because I'm having flashbacks. When I try to leave to go out in the community, my heart is racing. I'm getting panic attacks. That's what's happening to me. Like when I get nervous when I have to speak to people, because that's the reality. But it looks like a lack of interest. It looks like, oh, they don't care. It looks like, they're institutionalized. Right. And to some extent that may be the case, but a lot of it is the mental health is so compromised, and it has gone on for years without being addressed.
Yes, I think you've hit the hammer and the nail head there, because when we stop and look overall, and a person being incarcerated and coming back into the community, once that person behind that wall, that is a different world. So they have to learn to program their mind to be able to survive. I mean, I personally call it survival mode or survive for the fittest, you know? So we have to look at that, of how that mind is restructured to survive a day-to-day period while going through that situation of their, incarceration. Now the person comes out back in the community and they are have to do with everyday life, and that's what I feel that we need to be able to address it and have some kind of solution and resources for them.
Yes. Yes, you're right. So it's a mentality, right? So when you're inside, it's a mentality. But a lot of times when you transition back into the community, it takes a while to get out of that mentality, because there's a certain level of hypervigilance that exists, right?
Right.
And people perceive threats sometimes where there are no threats, and you respond in a way that, because you expect the threat to be there, right? And that in terms of barriers, that create barriers. And so, but a lot of time there are really no outlets for people to talk about this. There are no formal guidance and mentorship, and in terms of support, there may not be enough prolonged support out there, right? And so this is what we mean when we talk about a good, robust, wraparound, comprehensive services, right? Services that will address all of these different aspects, because all of these go together when we talk about long-term recovery, right? Because we don't just want to cope, right? The idea is for people to recover, right? To recover and to thrive afterwards. Yeah, it's a support. So you want to talk about support now or later? Like it's up to you.
We can talk about support even later on.
I didn't hear what you said. You were buffering. You lost connection there for a minute. I don't know if other people heard what you said, but I didn't hear.
I was saying that I feel that support is very important, and we will discuss that later on towards the end there. We can give up the support. But I think that there's different type of support. And one of the things that I think that people have a hard time with is be able to find someone they're comfortable with to get that support.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what we heard over and over again, right? Is that yes, and I hear it too from men that have transitioned. Yes, I go to the parole officer, to the parole office or wherever, they send me to some old white woman. I have nothing in common with this person. They can't relate to me. I can't relate to them, right? Like, yet I'm supposed to sit there and I'm supposed to go into how I'm feeling. Like, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. It will never happen, because what would be useful is for these men to have someone their same age, someone that have, if ideally, like a great understanding, someone like from it, someone that can relate to their life, can relate to something of what they've experienced, someone that they don't have to talk in codes with, someone that when they talk, right, that they can understand it. You don't have to explain, you don't have to educate people, because it's exhausting, like when you speak and people don't understand you, right? So like, for example, I think for the most part, young Black men do a lot better with young Black men, especially if they know that person has lived in certain areas, have had some experience, have been, know the language.
Right.
that you can, as a Black man that have experienced racism and cultural erosion and internalized racism and racial identity issues, you know, issues of self-esteem, issues of self-worth, issues of doubt, issues of isolation and loneliness and all of those things, right? That when I'm expressing this, that the person know and the person relate. But I'm certainly not going to disclose all of these things because it's not safe for me to do so within that current environment, right? And I said, even for me, a middle-class, middle-aged Black woman, like, you know, like I'm, you know, and this is the thing where when we talk about people just being real, there's some of these guys, these young men that exit the system that I've worked with in the past, but I even recognize that, you know what, ideally I may not be the right person to work with them, right? And so I try to transition them to someone to someone that I feel that they can relate to. But I think for some people, for some of us, especially if we want to practice from this very Eurocentric approach, the approach that says, you know what, I can work with anybody. Yes, you can. But sometimes when you work with some people, it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of their time because they're just coming to you out of obligation because they have to come and they're just sitting there wasting their time because they're not expecting you to help them. They're not even trying to access help from you. Right? So we shouldn't really fool ourselves, a lot of us mental health service providers, into thinking that because we went to school, because we have our training, because we have our degree, that we can work with everybody. Because clearly we cannot. We're not able to engage with them. We're not able to build therapeutic alliance with them, right? But yeah, they may come to us if they're mandated to come to us and they don't have a choice and we go through the motions. But if we're smart, you know, if we're smart, then we'll try to transition them to whoever. You know, there was a young man that I was seeing, you know, but he just exited after 7 years. You know, I transitioned him to someone else for a while, then that person had to leave. And at a certain time, you know, I didn't stop. I tried again with a psychiatrist, with a young psychiatrist. Yeah, they're from different world. One is a young doctor, you know, the other one, but they connected. And so when the psychiatrist emailed me to say, Donna, I'm moving my practice somewhere else. Like, would you mind if I take him with me? I said, absolutely. Please take him, keep him. Right. You know, I'm just happy that he connected with you. You can take him and keep him as your patient for as long as you want, right? Because I recognize that it was a better fit for him.
Yes.
But some of us, we're not willing to do that. You know, service only makes sense if it meets the needs of the clients.
Yes. I'm hoping that Martin was just running late from work and is trying to get home to join us. Hopefully he'll be able to join us soon. He said about 7:30. So with that said, if there's anyone out there that would love to join us and be a part of this conversation, you're welcome to just send a friend request, and I'll be more than glad to bring you in because we like to have our community be a part of our conversation. So you're more than welcome to. Okay, let's just carry on here. So with that said, Donna, looking and just listening to that recording earlier when we started out, and we have a little piece more that I'd like to continue to play. What within our community, what is available for someone like Bislow, like to give him that support after he goes through his challenges?
Well, like I said, they're nothing coordinated. It's a patchwork. Like I know SAPC at CAMH over the years, we've seen a lot of clients that are exiting the system or exit the system and need support. Like, so a lot of those clients we've been seeing over the years. But I mean, the program has a cutoff of, you know, officially it's supposed to be 25. But with our population, the issue with our population is that we access service later than others. So whereas people like from the dominant culture or the racialized group, they will access service earlier because of the fear that exists within the community. Our community usually access service a lot later, right? And so then you have this transitional year, we call youth that are transitional between 25 and 29. There's literally nothing out there for them. And so the program has some flexibility to provide service up to 29, but there is a hard stop at 30. Right? And so what I personally have been doing, I've been referring clients to CAFCAN because I know CAFCAN, Caribbean African Canadian Social Services, is that they have a men's group, and I've referred to their men's group, and I know their men's group, you know, they're able to, men, young Black men are able to access services. In that forum. So I've been referring to them. I know SAPISA, like I said, they're just expanding, and so they're going to be expanding to six other locations.
And who is this?
SAPISA, the Substance Abuse Program for African Canadian and Caribbean Youth, which is out of the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. So SAPISA, the name is sort of misleading. It doesn't only provide substance abuse service. It actually provides mental health and substance abuse services. So after years of advocacy, the program just finally got an increased funding. And so with that money, always join us. So let me just wrap this up and then you can join us. With that money, they're able to open other satellite locations. One location will be at Taibu Community Health Center in the East End. The other will be at Rexdale Community Health Center in the West End, as well as CAFCAN will have a satellite location. And there will be other satellite location in Windsor, Hamilton, and Ottawa area. So, so folks that are exiting the system, as long as they're under 30, they should be able to get some sort of long-term stabilization and support in the Greater Toronto area, because now the program has more capacity to take that on.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we have our guest or other guest here tonight, Martin. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I understand that I know you're hardworking young man, and you're just finishing up work. I would like to hear a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, hi, how's it going, everybody? How's it going, IG Live world? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, my name's Chris Martin. I'm 40 years old. I have a daughter that's a beautiful daughter of mine. She's 6, just finishing up work. I've worked in the marketing division before. I've worked in sales. I've worked in customer service. I've worked in finance for payroll for a lot of major companies. And now I'm actually working in construction, doing renovations and construction for a company. Great.
So tonight, as you're aware, we're discussing mental health. And you and I were speaking a while back, and you explained to me that you yourself have your own challenges. So what kind of resources or have you was able to come across, and what are the challenges that you face even addressing your own mental health?
No, I think it's the majority is comfortability, being comfortable, knowing what mental health is, the background behind it, as well as being comfortable enough to face it and tackle it and be aware of it personally and look for services. But finding services and being comfortable is two different things. So I think that's where I'm at right now in the stages. I've actually contacted Durham Mental Health through a probation for an incident that happened with myself and my daughter's mom recently. And the process is being slow. It slowed down a little bit through COVID. One of my actual intake workers had COVID, so I actually got transferred to another lady who contacted me the other day. And now she's on vacation for the next little while. I understand it's not an easy process. It's not they're probably really busy, and they have a lot of people that they're attending to. But right now, I'm just in the waiting stages of getting services and then moving on to the next chapter of my life, dealing with this and moving on.
So, one of the things, how was it for you going through your situation when it came to mental health, within the justice system? Were you able to get
It wasn't
support?
fun. It actually made it worse. Go ahead. Sorry.
Were you able to get support?
No, there was no real support. It was really hard. It actually made a lot of the situations worse. Made my mental health worse as well. And I'm just finding a way to deal with it now and move on and get the help that I need and the services I need for myself and for my family as well, for my daughter's mom as well too. She suffers from her own
Right,
mental health
wonderful. Okay.
issues.
So Donna,
So and
these are
that's also
perfect.
You still,
Go on. Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, so it's a combination of both. Myself and my daughter's mom have been through some serious things in life, and everybody has gone through, but everybody deals with things different. So it's just all about finding the right services and the time to understand yourself and understand what's really going on, and then creating an action plan from there to move forward and continue on with life and be a father and be a brother, be a son, be a nephew, be a friend, figuring all that out and going from there and getting back to some sort of normalcy in life.
Right. So at the present time, you are still looking for support within the community, more or less, right? Or have you been able to
Can you
have
say it
that
again?
support?
Sorry, I'm on the highway, so it's chopping in and out a little bit. I couldn't hear you. Repeat that.
At the present time, you're still looking for support to help you get through your own struggles. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. I'm not just relying on contacting one of the services provided in Ontario. I'm actually looking at doing my own research as well as finding other services as well. But I feel like the system's just overwhelmed with people looking for services or not knowing where to look, and there's not enough awareness or the access to services or knowing where services aren't readily available or known by people.
Right. So Donna, there's a perfect example of what we were just discussing. Here's an individual who's gone through this his own challenges, and he's at a stage right now where he's struggling just to get the help that he requires, and he's addressing the same things that you just finished speaking about, being able to have somebody who he's comfortable with and who he's able to open up with to be able to get over that hurdle that he's carrying.
exactly. And that's the story for him, and that's the story for so many other young men, you know? And that's what I say is that folks have to be really, really tenacious. They have to be really persistent. They have to be like really determined to get the help that they need, because the temptation would be, because the help is so difficult to access, to just give up and not to get the help, right?
Right.
Because it's so hard. So, people have to reach out to ask people to, you know, to be really open to say, you know what, do you know anybody? Because a lot of people even that have connected with me over the years, they didn't connect with me through official channels. They connected with me because they had a family member or someone else in crisis, and then someone gave them my number, and they usually don't say who it is, but usually someone gave them my number, and then they call me and say, you know what, I'm really struggling, I need help, can you help me? Or I have a family member that's struggling. Because in our community, it's like, okay, everybody know a guy or a woman that can do something, right? And so a lot of it is like very informal networks. And the other thing is that a lot of people in our community, they have to know someone at particular organization to access service there, right? They're not just going to go and just access service, because the fear of being rejected is so great. So with the way how we have our help-seeking behavior, even though sometimes you may know that it's an organization that's a Black organization or an organization that serves racialized people, then there's still this nervousness about accessing service unless you know someone, you know what they look like, you know their name, you know who, or someone else that have worked with them before can vouch for them. But
Right.
but there's always a fear of just accessing service from people you don't know, because you don't know them like that, right? How do you know how they're going to treat you, and the fear of being judged. So it's a fear of being judged, a fear of being misunderstood. Um, it's a lot of fears that are wrapped up in the help seeking, in seeking help, in accessing service, right? Because sometimes the judgment is real, right? And so in order to access service, and people really, they really have to be determined, because there's so many barriers, there's so many obstacles to services.
That's so true. Did you want to say something, Christopher? Did you have a
Yeah, no, I
question?
wanted to say something. You made a very good point there, speaking about fear of being judged, or fear of being comfortable in a situation with someone that you can relate to, in order to actually open up and get down to the nitty gritty, if you want to call it, of all the situations, whatever. That's a big challenge right there that I feel is preventing people from going to the next step and doing what they have to do in order to get back to their living their life as the way they want to, and dealing with what they have to do head on, and getting the help they need, going through what they have to go through in order to get to where they need to go, right? So I think that's a huge thing right now that I myself am experiencing, and I know a lot of other people as well have gone through the same thing. It's feeling comfortable, and maybe knowing somebody that will actually care and take the time to ask you a question, to talk to you, to listen to you, and then go from there and get a game plan after that.
Yeah, definitely. I can clearly understand that. Now, the other thing that I have to bring up here is that I have seen in a pattern. I've been seeing a lot of suicide within the last. I would say since October. I personally have seen 3 individuals that I've known that has passed away from suicide. Right.
Yes.
And now, what can we do? And how do we check in, or do we just check in and people we know? How do we get to know what's going on with our friends? Because I had one person I can call a friend, knowing them for over 40 years.
That took their life. That
Yeah.
end up. Yeah. Okay, so this is the thing, right? Is that for most people that take their lives, there is some underlying mental health issues. So often, a lot of time, people that are functioning well, of course they don't get up and say, okay, let me take my life today, right? Like in almost all of the cases, it was because someone has been struggling with depression. And then sometimes for years, right? And then at a certain point, there's a shift where people lose the will to live. And oftentimes, it's been in the works for a while, but people don't really feel comfortable talking about it, because we've lost our protective factor. In the past, no matter how bad things got, right, for Black people, we never thought of suicide. It's just something that from a religious, cultural standpoint, we would never do. But I think over a period of years of assimilation, of taking of a lot of us, of adapting Eurocentric ideals and Eurocentric values, then suicide became an option for us. So we have to start, because and again, right, it's the same thing. We have to start from taking care of, from understanding the threats to mental health, right? And the isolation. And I think for Black men especially, we have to create more spaces where Black men can come together, just Black men in safe spaces, to talk about issues such as this. Because a lot of times it's very isolating, and the isolation, the social isolation, is what really gets to people. It's not really what happened to us that traumatizes us. It's often the inability to really talk about those things, right? And so we have to start creating the spaces where if someone say, you know what, man, sometimes I just feel like doing something, because we talk in code, right? You know this. We're
Yeah.
not saying, oh, well, I'm thinking of taking my life. The languaging will be different. It will be like, honestly, sometimes I just feel like doing something, man. But we all know what that means, right? So a
Yeah.
group of brothers sitting down talking and talking together, that's the language. But again, we have to create spaces. We have to create more spaces, and we have to make it acceptable. And I think as women folk that are supporting men, then we also have to support men to create those spaces for themselves. Sometimes not in a formal way, but in very informal spaces. Because a lot of men throughout this pandemic has really lost the gathering at the barber shops, the gathering to play cards or to play dominoes at this place, that place, right? We, they've lost that. And in the absence of that, the despair sets in. So it's how, you know, like a lot of times we can't really help, we can't really rely on people outside the community to help us, right? There's no one that's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves.
That is
And
so.
so, yeah, for you, you know, for your organizations, if you're not even currently doing that, then how can you think about doing that? How can you partner with other agencies, other Black agencies, to run a men's group? I know for a while Malvern had a men's group. I know Ojima House. I'm not sure what's going on there in the West End, right? But ideally, we should have some safe spaces around there for Black men, where they know that, you know what, every Tuesday night from 8 to 10, we're gonna go just men, right?
Right.
And then we can have this space to talk about the things that we're going on in our lives. It doesn't have to be anything formal. You know, all you need is some Black men and some food to really talk, right? To have the therapeutic session.
Right. Just to be able to feel an area where you feel comfortable to express yourself and not feel judgmental, you know, and everybody can just.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely
Right?
agree
So
with you.
even among the men that have exited there, is there a network where you know, because I know sometimes there's this non-association, this, you know, can't speak to this one, can't speak, but and that's something that's certainly a barrier, right? But like, how do we, after the time has passed, like how do we have something in place, especially for men that have similar experiences, that they can share and support each other?
That's definitely. Now, before we go here, we're getting down to the end. I like for two things. Christopher, anything you want to say before you go, or ask any questions, or anything you want to share with us? You've got a minute. Christopher, can you hear me? Okay, looks like we can hear me. Okay, then. So, Donna, before we run out of time here, I would like to ask you, is there any way that anybody can reach out to you as a social worker? I personally have been calling you for years when it comes to people who come through Keep Six and for support and so forth, and you've been at the front line. How can our viewers or our community that might have somebody that needs a social worker, someone to talk to? Is there a way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so for the program, so I'll give my contact for the program, and we do have a caseworker that you know, she manages call and intakes and referrals. So my number, which is 416-575-8985. 416-575-8985. The other locations for the satellite, we're just in the implementation process. So we're just now starting to hire other staff for those locations. So they're not up and running yet. We're just in the implementation process. So for now, the core location is still providing services. short-term crisis support, and with a goal of eventually transitioning people back into the community wherever they live. So for people so they can call me, like I'm very accessible. People can call me and then I'll get the caseworker to call them back, or one of the other social workers will be able to call them back.
Beautiful, thank you. And again, for anyone out there that needs some kind of support, you're welcome also to call Keep Six. Our toll-free number is 1-800-640-3075. Again, 1-800-640-3075. You're welcome to call us, and we will put you definitely in touch with one of our counselors that we have, and even Donna. We're able to reach out to her and connect you. And I have one more thing I would like to just share with our viewers before I go, and it's a poem that Bisloke shared with us from the recording here. I'd just like to play that before we go, just to finish it off here, because to me this is very powerful when I have an individual who is incarcerated and they are actually expressing themselves, be that voice for these people.
Something that could be altered after the cards were dealt, affected by the grief we endure or pain that we felt. I know you feel ashamed when you feel like asking for help. We tend to mask it ourselves without feeling stashed on a shelf. Overwhelmed by internal flames, infernos crash till we melt. Psychological hurdles go in circles, fasten your belts. Could a strong will prevail, whether you be on road or in jail. Thank God for the air that we inhale, and heads up for the tails that'll impale. In the world that we live in, it'll always get hard, but you can't give in. Gotta try to keep a strong disposition, and don't worry about the public's opinion, cause that'll drive you insane. Words could really leave you feeling inflamed. Worse than bullets when they rip through your rib cage. Person try to go converse when you're in pain. Take six, they got a line to a fit there. You gotta try to free your mind till it gets cleared. It's hard to walk along that line when you're impaired. A lot of people live a lie when they get scared. Scared of being who they are cause they're misjudged. But they don't need to be around if you don't get loved. You gotta learn to hold your own and then you won't budge from other people in your bubble like a soap stud. Mental health, never neglect that. Try and talk to somebody to help protect that. I know at times when we stress it feel like a setback, but we're the ones that control our minds, so accept that. And don't allow anybody else to oppress that, cause you could fall in a hole of darkness, get back. Losing focus of mental motives they extract. Try to channel your energy when it gets bad towards something more positive, good or promising, not provocative, but more evocative and cognitive, less derogative. City full of hate, we all know that's what Toronto is, but everyone is special regardless if they acknowledge it. Facts.
Thank you to Bisloke for reaching out to Keep Six and to discuss mental health that he's going through while being incarcerated. Christopher, I want to say thank you to you. Any last word before we go?
No, thank you very much for having me. Allow me to share my experience, and definitely hit up Keep Six for any of your needs. And I'm also available at _hot play if you ever want to talk or share experience or have a conversation. I'm always open to helping people and giving back to the community.
Thank you. And again, I'd love to have you on again when you have a little bit more time, you're not working, to have a deep conversation about your own lived life experience, because that's very important for me to always share, because I always share my own personal life experiences too. But thank you again for being a part of this.
You're welcome for having me. Thanks for having me, and I'll definitely be on again with more time and not in my work attire and looking all sappy and stuff. But hey,
it's okay. You look cute.
I made it home. I'm almost home right now. I made it home, so I'm good.
It doesn't matter how you're dressed. The important thing is that you're here.
It matters 100% at what you talk about, what you say, and what you share, and what you appreciate, and what you listen to.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Yes, Donna, and Donna, again, I really want to say sincerely thank you so much for being a part of this discussion, and again for your support through the years to Keep Six and to the members in our community that we've connect you with. Again, thank you and for the hard work that you do. I know it's very, very hard and it's important. And again, it doesn't go unnoticed. That's all I can say, you know. And again, thank you everyone to all of our viewers. We do appreciate it, and we'll play a little bit of music here for the last couple of seconds before we go here. Leave the gun alone. Stop the gun violence.
Representing for Canada and the whole world. See, tell the youth them, load the gun, don't touch it, see it and leave it alone. Want a better world. Yeah, man. Jackyard, don't know a jackyard. Representing for the youth them. See the gun, leave it alone. You have to see the blood I run. Yeah, man. Yo, Richard, Keep Six Record, even his music.
Yeah, let's thank Jack Can. Jack Can is an artist that we signed in Keep Six Record, or a record label that I opened up about a year ago. That's one of our first artists, and we just got to send a positive vibe out there to the community and keep it going. And let's come together, the community, and work together to make a better future for the next generation. Folks, thank you very much again.
Great, wonderful.
God bless.
Okay, bye.